Yeah, and I don't think that there was any pinpoint reason on why it went down the way it did. I think it was a multitude of things that built up, from the end of 2013 going into 2014. We had, a really brutal tour schedule. We were in Europe, we were in Australia, we were doing B markets, and those tours were costing us a lot of money. So we weren't
Mm.
making a lot of money. Um, I don't think Punisher ever, I don't think Eclipse ever really launched us to kind of where we hoped. I felt like we were kind of stagnant. It didn't really do much better than it did. It was kind of the
Mm.
same sort of sales. It wasn't getting us more tours or anything like that. So I was in a sort of a dark place. I kind of drifted from the band. I didn't communicate with them well. None of us are very emotional and communicate well with each other. We didn't really open up much about feelings and things like that. So I drifted from the band probably that whole time period. Started drinking more, and not really focused on the band as much as I probably should have been. Now I'm a business owner, I'm a father. I look back on it and it's like, what the fuck was I doing? I don't, I'm a completely different person. I was kind of young and stupid then, but I think I was in a dark place. I wasn't performing as tight as I could have. And at the end of it, it just came down, we were recording. I did Subject Zero. We did that song. We put that song out. They did the music. We went to Australia, came back. I tried recording. It just wasn't going well. The music was a little different for me. It wasn't as heavy. It wasn't as many blast beats and things. And I think the band had kind of lost confidence. I don't know if they were very happy in my performance on Eclipse either. I think that they
Mm.
thought maybe vocally I should have been more catchy and things like that. And I think that built up even more with the next album. They wanted to really make that launch album that was going to make us bigger and make us and in their mind, I think that they wanted to sound a little catchier, a little more maybe like Periphery style and something like that. And that was hard for me vocally because I just felt in the dumps. I didn't feel like I could write that stuff. I was trying to write stuff catchy and it was kind of just making me have writer's block, and I was struggling. The vocals didn't sound the way I wanted them to sound. Sumerian did not want me to record with Michael Keane, so that was another difference.
Mm.
But in the end, it kept not working out. Vale wanted me to go record with Spencer Sotelo from Periphery. I love Spencer. He's an awesome dude, but I didn't think that we kind of creatively meshed very well there.
Mm.
And we ended up eventually settling on Will Putney. So I was going to go record with Will Putney for that next album that they put out. And that was at the end of Mayhem. We were supposed to put this album out before Mayhem. So
Mm.
Mayhem was not happy with us because, we didn't put an album out. Now we're trying to promote one afterwards
Yeah, yeah,
that's
yeah.
not even
Off
finished.
the
So
back
like,
of, yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
like we don't have ad mats for it or anything. It's not done. They can't. So we kind of flopped it right there.
Hmm.
And partially, I guess that was my fault. I didn't have a lot of time to listen to the songs and take in the songs, and we were touring all the time, so it was very stressful to do that. So
Hmm.
I think things just fell apart and collapsed. And at the end of Mayhem, I didn't have any money. I was pissed off. I was trying. I shut the band out for a day or two, and in that day or two, they sent me an email that I was no longer in the band, basically,
Mm.
and that they were going to move forward without me. So yeah, it was a very chaotic time. I don't, it was a long time ago, so I try to put myself in those shoes, but I was a bit of a different person then, and in a dark place, I guess, and not, I see where they came from because I could have been tighter, I could have been doing more, but it is what it is.
Were those things you were being told, or was that I'm kind of getting a sense of maybe some self pressure there, or was that stuff like, oh, you're not tight enough, or
They
that
had
sort of
they
thing?
had mentioned some things like that,
Mm.
like they had told me, like go watch a YouTube video, and then there was some times, like Mark had mentioned to like CJ from Die Hard is Murder, I don't think Brandon's I don't think he's very good at writing catchy stuff or
Mm.
cool parts. So he basically told him to try to help me. And that kind of stuff, I think, just kind of crushed me a little bit and didn't make me feel too confident, which gave me kind of bad writer's block. But
Mm.
Well, there's also because if you know, like it needs creativity, it needs to be natural, right? Like, and I'm not saying I understand they wanted a new direction and stuff like that, but also for you, especially as a vocalist, it's your voice, everything, it needs to flow, it needs to be natural. You need to put your mind where you want to go and stuff. It needs to be genuine to be, and even then it's a difficult task to do. Even in your best creative space, it's actually difficult to come up with stuff. So like when you're forcing yourself to go in a direction that, let's be honest, wasn't your favorite as well, right? It wasn't at core what you want to do, for sure. You're already not super confident, then you feel it because like in your performance it translates, then you kind of feel the reaction of people. So it's kind of,
Well, it takes time too, right? I think that's a big thing. Like if even if you wanted to trudge through it, that would require time, which you didn't have either, right? So
yeah, I mean, I recorded off Matriarch, the album, I think
yeah.
it's called. I recorded probably half that album on vocals, but it wasn't it. You know, I don't think that I thought it was it. I don't think Sumerian thought it was it. I don't think that the band thought it was it. You know, they didn't even want me to really do a lot of lows, which also kind of threw me off a lot. You know, it was a lot of high and mid sort of screams and just trying to sound catchier, you know, and it just felt weird to me. You know, it didn't feel natural. So
as a genuine opinion too, like my personal favorite of yours are your lows, so I would have been kind of bummed out by that. I mean, I think you're known a lot for those as well. Not to say, like, I know you're doing other kinds of scream, but like when I think Vel of Maya, when I think that era, like the lows comes to mind. That's kind of,
well, that's what a lot of it was, right? Like a big portion of it was lows.
Yeah, I always, that was the easiest scream for me, just naturally to do. It was the lows. It just came easy to me. So I always enjoyed doing them. I liked the sound of it, but you know, I think that they in the route of wanting to sound a little bit more catchy, a little more digestible to people, removing those screams at that time period was kind of the route to go. You know, like people were moving away from heavy at that time. People didn't want to be heavy because if you were the bands that weren't heavier and heavier, you just got death metal tours. You didn't really get the bigger tours. You never got to do something like Warped Tour, you know, none of that stuff. So no, it was tough. You know, I probably wouldn't have admitted that obviously at first, but you know, I at that point, I didn't even like metal. I didn't want to associate with it. I didn't want to think about it. I didn't post on social media really. I just kind of shut everything out because it didn't feel good anymore. You know, it's like you go and look at the comments and people are like, well, he sucked anyway, good riddance, you know, things like that. And it just, you know, I was already, like I said, not in probably the best spot, and it didn't help anything. So it just, you know, I didn't want anything to do with it. I didn't want to associate with it. I didn't want to think about it. And I think honestly, someone really big who helped me out with that was Ryan from I Declare War, their old drummer. Because I was living in Seattle at that time. My current wife, my girlfriend at the time, needed to move to Seattle for a job. So I was out there in Seattle, and he instantly, as soon as I left the band, gave me a job with him painting. I worked at his painting company for a few years actually in Seattle. And you know, he had like good.
I was told to ask you about that.
Yeah, that was him.
You professionally painted
he was my
in
boss.
Washington State. Okay,
he was my boss. But that's what the I Declare War dudes were. We knew them from probably the coolest fucking tour ever. The Whitechapel, Acacia Strain, Chelsea Grin, us, I Declare War. That was one of the coolest tours ever. But
that's a fucking lineup and a half.
I knew all those guys from that, and Ryan just, you know, he instantly helped me out with everything. You know, he was like, I could talk to somebody who had been in that situation, who had left that and moved on to just, you know, normal working everyday kind of life, you know, not touring, and it was hard, you know, because it felt like I didn't really have a lot of my friends anymore. You know, it's like, that's your world when you're touring all the time, is other bands and things like that. And it felt very like, whose side are you on kind of thing. And I didn't want to be involved in any of that, you know, so I just kind of stayed out of it and shut myself out of it.